Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alive Prompt. Today, we are going to be discussing finding adult joy. My name is Lovely Brown. I'm a mental health advocate, a holistic coach, and I believe in helping women who are suffering from burnout, who are going through infidelity, and rebuilding confidence. And today, I am excited to be speaking to Dr. Young. This is our first time meeting, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here. Dr. Young?
Hi, it's good to be here. This is the first time I've been interviewed on a live. I've been doing, been shooting, so this is going to be fun. I don't have to work so hard, and you do.
Well, look, we both gonna work hard because we're gonna figure it
O-
out. So, one of the
Okay.
things that I love about adult joy is understanding that as children, we don't always have choices, but as we get older, we absolutely can redirect and reframe the thoughts, our decisions, and how we handle stress. And
Hmm.
why my thought behind finding joy as an adult really stems from me understanding that my parent did the best that they could. And now, as an adult, I get to find joy. I get to jump in puddles of rain. I get to find a puzzle. And being able to have this unique conversation with Dr. Young, I'm always interested in how we attack joy because I really believe that we should attack joy as much as possible. And looking at it from an advocate side, which is me, and then looking at it from Dr. Young's side with all of the different knowledge that he's been able to research and discover. I just think it gives us a chance to see two different perspectives in this alive prompt, but really understanding that the conversation needs to be had. So, Dr. Young, how do you express adult joy?
Well, deal it with intention. Joy is not something that most people have. It is. It is difficult to achieve for many, especially African Americans, because a lot of us grew up in homes that were in survival mode. What we consider success in many instances is functionality. We consider success because if you're fortunate to grow up in a two-parent household, thank God I was, but if you are, and then was that household functional? You
Mm.
know, the other thing is, if we look back just two generations, most of our families were in some struggle. Men went to work when the sun came up and came home when it came down. Women, in many instances, if they worked outside the home, they were in a situation where they were probably taking care of somebody else's family. Even if they were a school teacher, they were taking care of somebody else's kids. But we are only four generations removed from being enslaved. And when
Mm-hmm.
we think about African Americans and having joy and happiness, I remember looking at a scene on the Boondocks, and it was Uncle Ruckus. They were showing his childhood, and they were talking about they called a man Mister, and he came in, and Ruckus was just an innocent little kid, right? And he walks in, boy, did I just catch your ass having fun? you know, and, and it's like, it's funny, but being honest,
But
it's
yes,
true. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of people that grew up in circumstances that were anything but fun. So when we get older, we ask this question, okay, I need to look like I'm successful. So
mm,
what does it take to do that? Or I need to look like I'm happy. So what does it take to do that? And what I found, like I have a lot of my clients are pro athletes and public figures and entrepreneurs. I remember a very famous rapper being in my office one day, and he's new to the game. Well, when he walked in, he had on all his chains and what have you. And I looked at him. I said, "Dog, seriously, man, that's like some 1990s early 2000s shit you doing right now. Why are you doing that? And he said, D, man, come on, man. Why you got to knock my grip? And I said, I'm not knocking your grip. I said, but may I show you some pictures? And I want you to notice something. So I pull up pictures of other clients of mine that happen to be famous rappers. Now, I didn't tell him these guys were my clients, but I said, I want you to look at this picture. This is dude in the 90s. This is dude in the 90s, and this is dude in the early 2000s, right? Now, here's a picture of the dude in 2015, 2020, 2023. I
Mm.
said, what do you notice is different? He said, man, they done made it, man, but they don't have to wear this anymore. And I said, now, what did you just say?
Mm.
He said, oh, dog. He said, damn. I said, that's the point. I said, you want to look successful when what you have on, if you got that much jewelry on, you should live in something like Rick Ross is living in,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? I said, because if that's your daily wear, that means that your crib should be about maybe 1,000 times the value of what's on your neck.
Mm.
So if you got on $1,000 chain, then you should at least have $100,000 house, right? If you got on a $10,000 chain, you should at least have $1 million house. You feel me?
Yeah.
And where I'm going with this is that when we think about joy, we're probably calling bliss joy. We're more than likely um, calling an absence of debt joy. When joy is something that encompasses much more than something that's temporal or transactional. That makes any sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I and the interesting thing that you said, and I love it, which is so poignant, and I always talk to my children about it. Um, it's like if you have to call yourself cool, I need you to stop and think, right? We have to have these conversations. Like I'm the cool dad. I'm like, you really, you just asked yourself out of that one. But for me, in search of joy, two things happen for me: spiritual awakening for me, because I used to think that joy meant that you were just happy. Like a situation made you happy. You had a thing happen and you could show it to people. But honestly, grief and learning how to grieve properly is what helped me find joy. Because in my grief, in my depression, in my lowest moments, I had like those small bits of light that kind of came through and I could smile a little bit. I realized I didn't cry for a couple of hours. I was having these small moments where I like bit into a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and was like, I remember a time where I couldn't afford this thing. And
Well,
this
pause
is
for a minute. I want to understand. I think your audience wants to understand. Are you comfortable with sharing with us, like, what were you grieving over?
several things. The initial grief was my relationship with my husband. We were going through a really, really rough time. And I was having these bouts of, I've suffered from depression probably, I probably had postpartum and didn't know it. Never dealt with the postpartum. Because I'm a strong black woman. I'm going to get back to work. I don't have the time to think about being down. We got to make money. We have things to do. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, talking about the sadness made other people sad and uncomfortable. People pleasing jumped in. So you don't talk about it because I don't want the people around me to be sad the way I'm feeling sad. So I had all of this, I had mountains of mountains. You could only see the peak. But what was
Mm-hmm.
happening underneath was these moments where I didn't know how to grieve properly. I didn't know how to be myself without having a title attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, when I turned 37, I always tell people, I mean, at this point, the giggle that is really the sadness, not really the giggle that is the happiness kicks in. But
Hmm.
I went through about 3 months of just crying. And I'm working in corporate America. I am number one of six black people and 350 other people. And I don't cry around other people. That was just the way I was raised. You hold your feelings in until you get somewhere safe. And I couldn't do that. So I said, okay, well, let me go to the doctor. Give me something to make the sadness go away. Sadness doesn't go away like that because my doctor said, I'm not giving you anything. I'm giving you a journal and you're going to sit down and we're going to think about it. And then we're going to start therapy. And therapy really was the place where I learned how to grieve,
Hmm.
but I had so much to grieve about that it took years. I'm still working on it. And I love that I'm still working on it, that I'm healed and I'm here to heal you. No, baby, we're working on this together. And sometimes I fall and my knee pads are really rough. But I was really going through grieving my relationship, grieving the loss of people in my life, learning how to accept the fact that I was allowed to be angry and allowed to be sad and allowed to be elated. I had all of these new emotions that were popping up. And joy was one of those things that I thought I knew what joy was until it set me on my ass. And I
Hmm.
realized I didn't know what joy was. But I had to, therapy is really the place where I had to learn how to be so angry and grieve the loss of the life that I thought I was supposed to have, to be mindful of the life that I have and improve that life.
Yeah, yeah. What you said some things that I think resonate with people is that I'm in an environment and I'm considered other, whether I want that classification or not.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is the code shifting, where there's a lot of effort being put into making sure that my behavior matches your expectation,
Absolutely.
and that is done at one's expense and often to one's detriment. So
Yes.
becoming aware that there's a problem is critical. You can't fix something until you can call it something, right? When
Absolutely.
you put a label on it, now you can address it, or now you have dominion over it. I believe that it's critical for African Americans to stop living a lie. I just signed a new book deal. This book will come out next year. Uh, I think it comes out in like March next year.
Right.
But it's called Leading from the Heart,
Mm,
and it's about self-empathy and self-compassion.
mm,
We cannot experience transcendence, peace, nor love until we actually make it a point to admit that, am I being kind to myself? Because what many of us aren't aware of is we're teaching people how to treat us, and they're learning how to treat us by how we treat ourselves.
mm-hmm.
If we don't open up that door and say to another person through our behavior, not through our words, that here's a boundary. Don't cross that, because if you do, you're infringing upon my time, my self worth, my character.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a boundary. I'm going to honor me right now by the way that I present myself and conduct myself. And if you can't meet me where I am, then perhaps you shouldn't meet me at all. And these are things that,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So these are things that are critical to find joy. But however, I caution people, you might want to find peace, because if you don't find that, you'll never make it to joy.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that one, I had to get to a place in my life where the truth, I allowed the truth to hurt me, right? Because you have to get to a place where you are so honest with yourself. And I always speak in I statements, something that I love about therapy. Speaking in I statements, it
Mhm,
helps me out tremendously. I had to learn
mhm,
how to be honest with myself in a way that taught me lessons, because
mhm,
up until probably, I always say 37 was just a pivotal moment for me in so many ways. It was a pivotal year for me. And it's a pivotal year for a lot of women, not knowing where your hormones are going, change of life, discovering yourself. I always tell people I discovered that I was a black woman in my 30s. Not that I didn't know I was black, but in corporate, being a
Mm-hmm.
black woman 10 toes down
Mm-hmm.
and not regretting it, holding space for yourself, then realizing the responsibility that you've taken on for the people who come after you, because they look at you as the, oh, she's really being herself. But that truth that I had to learn how to do was really in me going to therapy, unwrapping a lot of very unsavory things about myself. And it wasn't anything that I could pinpoint on my own. And I think that a lot of people, when we go to therapy, we think that we should be very sitcom. We should
Mm-hmm.
sit on the couch, tell a few jokes to alleviate the pressure that we feel or the discomfort that we feel, and then have the therapist tell us what we need to do. When I really felt like my therapist was a wonderful whiteboard. I threw
Mm-hmm.
all of these words at my therapist. They helped me organize what was happening in my head. And then they helped me break down my emotions that were attached to those things. But
Mm-hmm.
without that, accepting that I was failing, not because I knew I was failing, but because I wasn't asking any questions. I was just going on the, why would I tell you that something's wrong so that you can attack me? That's the side that I was coming from, versus
Mm-hmm.
understanding that I'm supposed to fail. That's how I learn. But
Yeah.
failure in black community sometimes means death. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something that, a lot of us are scared of when we admit that we are failing at something.
Well, there are intersections that you're talking about. One, you can't get anything out of seeing a clinician until it's a deliberate and intentional move that you're going to make to
Hmm.
do that. Second, there has to be an alignment. Um, when people reach out to me, one of the first things I tell them is I don't take everybody. And they'll say, well, damn, doc, you don't take it. I'm like, no, because there has to be an alignment. And if I don't feel it here with you, how are we going to connect up here?
Hmm.
If I sense that you're not really wanting to do the work, you're wanting me to do the work for you, or you want me to justify or enable you, I'm probably not going to be a good guy at that because, as you can tell, that's definitely not my demeanor.
Yeah.
However, the fact that you said these things about, I realized something was wrong, I was depressed, you decided that vulnerability was a lot safer than keeping up appearances.
Hmm.
And because of that vulnerability, obviously your clinician created a safe space for you
Hmm.
where you could be vulnerable. And there had to be um, some alignment present in order to make that progress. But what I would offer to people that are listening to this is, if you're at a point in your life where you're really wondering, what's my next move? That's the first step. Second step is stop wondering and do something about
Hmm.
it. Do your homework. Um, the things to look for when you look for a clinician, there should be a body of work that's evident. There should be some publications. They should be an expert for somebody's media outlet. They're, they need to have proper credentials. Reviews on Trustpilot, I wouldn't trust reviews on Google. I would, because at that point, unless somebody's got a bot or an AI, and you're not going to see that with
Yeah.
clinicians, those reviews are probably going to be a little bit more honest and a lot. But you have to make sure that before you take this next step, are you committed to deal with your rabbit holes, because you're going to go down them.
Mm.
And
Mm.
what and that deep introspection, when a clinician, like somebody will come see me, and I'll talk to them for a moment and I'll say, okay, may I reflect back to you what I just heard? And then I
Yeah.
will share with that person, in many instances, may I be vulnerable and share a little about me to see if there's some alignment? Here's my history.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think I may match with you. Well, for some people, they'll hear that and it'll be a complete turnoff. Others, they'll be like, "You the right person for me." And I think that we have to understand finding a good clinician is like going to buy a pair of shoes. You might see some that look really good, but when you put them on and you try to walk in them, you know what I'm saying? Not
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And then also quality. You pay for quality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get what you pay for. If people, when they look at beginning this healing journey, it you only a fool begins that journey without first assessing the cost.
Yeah.
Well, if you want quality, you're gonna pay for it. You're not gonna pay $75 an hour for a good therapist, and especially if it's a highly credentialed clinician or coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those fees are gonna cost you $200 to $500 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're paying for, if somebody tells me, well, Doc, well, look, that's what you're paying for, right? You're paying for bandwidth. And those things, those aren't merit badges. Those are $10,000, $15,000, $100,000 a pop credentials. And I'm not saying that the credentials are enough because without compassion, without integrity, without life experience, those credentials fall flat because what you're going to need is somebody that's going to be an accountability partner to you. And
Mm-hmm.
what you said earlier was that you went to your clinician, you sat there, and all of this stuff that had been suppressed, repressed, came out, and the clinician allowed it to come out. And at that point, you guys co-created what we were going to talk about and what's most of all this stuff, what's most important for you.
Mm-hmm.
And as you started pulling these things down, what I love that you said afterward is, man, I went down this road for some years. This wasn't no a couple of weeks
No.
work I did. This was an ongoing epistemological, meaning one thing built on another
Mm-hmm.
process that you undertook. And the most powerful thing you said is, and I'm still working on me.
Amen.
Yeah, yeah.
Amen. And I think that when one, I love how you really just broke down the levels of receiving care because I want us to understand that mental health for so many people, when they hear the word mental health, they automatically think mental illness or mental disorder. And I'm like, listen, and this is why I wanted to become a mental health advocate. I went back to school. I I'm still ongoing education consistently. Not because I said I want to become a doctor, because I'm in the legal field and I love being able to touch lives that way. To be able to work with people in the legal spectrum. But really, it's because when you are in a space where you are touching lives every day, if you aren't working on your healing, you're going to affect the next person. If you're in a uncomfortable space in your life and somebody calls you, a client will trigger you like there's no other. A phone call will trigger you. And how you
Mhm.
respond, learning how to hear yourself, be very self-reflective, very aware of what's coming out of your mouth, the energy that you are putting out into the world is so important. But also being able to say to a person when they say to you, well, why should I see a therapist? And I say, well, if you had diabetes, would you go see your doctor? Yeah, I would. Okay, if you had congenital heart failure, would you go see your doctor? Yeah, I would. Okay, so think about your mind in that same space. When your mind is ill and you are feeling like you're losing control, your therapist, your psychologist, your counselor, they are here to help you maneuver through life, figure out what's going on so you can get to the disease. And you don't have to have a diagnosis to talk to someone. That's what I always hear somebody, well, nothing's wrong with me. You can go as a very happy, healthy person to your therapist and still need to work on how to deal with your job, how to deal with your marriage, how to deal with being single, how to deal with your children, how to deal with your career. And it helps people just realize that there are very layman terms that we can use when we're talking about therapy, and then you can get to a space where you're talking to a gentleman as yourself and really have somebody give you play by play what it means to speak to a doctor and have you respect your doctor, but have your doctor respect you, and be in a space where you guys can really have a good Tetris in your communication skills. Because without respect, because we're creating a relationship. Like, my therapist is not my friend, but we're in a relationship. You know things about me that nobody else knows about me. And it gives me that safe space to be able to let down my guard and just talk. So when we're talking about going to therapy, I really want us to understand that this isn't, it's not just because you feel sick. Sometimes it's because things are going good and they help you lay out a plan, map out a plan for your life, which can be so, and it's an unbiased, they're not here to be your friend, they're here to help you get the results that you want.
Well, in mental health, and I think this is some people need to understand. So, if you go see a psychotherapist or a psychologist, typically it's about a trauma that's impacted your life.
Mm-hmm.
You are having that impede your day to day function. And that clinician, a psychologist or a
Mm-hmm.
psychotherapist, they are going to help you to put a name to that. And it's going to meet a certain criteria. At that point, the intervention that they prescribe will may or may not include some medications, right? If you go see a psychiatrist, this is probably something that's really affecting brain function and processing. There's probably some type of neurochemical imbalance. So a
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist is going to look at that from pharmacological intervention, or it could even be a surgical intervention depending on what's going on. But that's rare. But typically, they're going to try to throw something to help neurochemical balance and regulation kick in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the psychiatrist. Here's the psychologist. Someone like me who's a neuroscientist. My skill set will have the clinical background where I understand what is on that MRI and on that CAT scan and your blood work. But I'm also going to look, the reason I practice as a coach, and I'm a master credential coach, I'm also a national board certified health and wellness coach, which is the clinical side of coaching. I'm going to look at what is debilitating, what is your objective,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to have you take some psychological assessments so I can see what is going on with you in terms of awareness, personality type, disruptive thinking, emotional intelligence, and the like. So this is kind of an evolution of those other things, but it's also going to now help me identify your strengths, your blind spots, things that are indigenous to you, things that are probably sustaining trauma, and then help you to have a neurological, cognitive approach and how you regulate these things. The best of all worlds is to have an interdisciplinary team. So there are
Yes.
times that someone works with me and I find out, dude, how many blunts are you smoking a day? That's too damn many. So you have a chemical dependency, abuse, or addiction issue. I have people that are constituent to my team that will deal with only that part of you, while you and I work on the things that are going to help bring intentional outcomes to your life.
Mm.
Also, there may be some trauma, and if that trauma is, let's say, I hate to think of it, but I thought about Donald Trump. So, say sexual trauma, where some
Mm.
man has taken advantage of you by an inverted power dynamic, and that man could have been an uncle, father, a
Yep.
teacher, whatever. Then that's something that probably a psychoanalyst or a psychotherapist needs to work with you on your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you were saying earlier was that people will make this comment saying, I'm fine. Well, anytime you use always or never in a sentence, that's a sign that you have an issue. The other part of it is you may be fine, just like what you said. You may be fine, meaning your bills are paid and you can eat. However, that does not infer that you're functioning at optimal capacity. So when you come see someone like me, I will take some objective measurements like some psychological assessments, and that will indicate your blind spots as well as strengths and what have you. And then we can build upon these places where you think you're overperforming, but you're actually underperforming. Here's something to think about. There have been several studies, Stanford University, Case Western, different institutions, where they measure efficacy. And efficacy is one's belief in their own ability to accomplish something, right?
Mm.
So they will ask people, well, I want you to rate your inner circle or your group, your family. How well do you think this person is could manage the group or govern outcomes? And they'll say, they may or may not be okay. Then you ask the question, well, how do you think you will do? Oh, I'll do fine. I got I got this. Well, the truth is, people often overesteem their capabilities,
Hmm.
and they will, in many ways, diminish the capacity of someone other than themselves, right?
Yes.
Now, we measure the accurate performance later. And what we find is this person did not perform at the level they thought they did. And when we go and bring other stakeholders in and say, well, why don't you rate their performance? We will often find that the other person thought of you what you thought of them, meaning that you overesteemed yourself and then they really see you here and
Hmm.
you looked at them. Now, here's what's funny, our assessments of other people typically fall between a margin of error of about 10 to 15% being close to what they actually are capable of. But when we look at ourselves, that's not so much the case. So, where I'm going with this is all of us have an overinflated view of ourselves. Even when we get the information to identify and confirm that our hypothesis is inaccurate, the question is, how do you course correct? And the only way to do that is to get in to see a clinician that can give you something that is less subjective and more objective in terms of assessment, where that comes into self-regulation
Hmm.
and peace. That allows you now to move from survival mode to functional mode. When
Hmm.
you move from functional mode, now you can get to thriving mode, and
Hmm.
that's the gateway to joy, right? When you get to where
Absolutely.
you're thriving, but the anchor point for joy is flourishing. And the
Hmm.
only way that you're going to get to flourishing is to move past survival.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that you say that because my husband will say that that's your mantra. That's all you ever say. I'm like, I tell people all the time, I know what it feels like to be in survival mode. I know what it feels like to be on this healing journey where you think you're functioning and you're just really highly functioning in survival mode, right? It looks really good on the outside, the face is done, the dress is on, when you look behind the scene, there's a dress is tucked inside of your panties. You're lost. The back don't look as good as the
Yeah,
front looks, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was one of those things. The reason why I'm so uh, thankful for clinicians that absolutely take their time, because it's a lot of spiritual energy that you guys extend in a day to be able to help us out. And I don't think that anybody really looks at. They're like, well, it's your job, but you guys still have to go home and find your own clinician to talk to like work through the things that you're going through. And I think when I became a mental health advocate and just a coach with helping women through burnout, it was because I know what it looks like. I'm not talking to you as a person who's never done this. Like everything that I help another person with is because I've gone through it, and I could be 10 steps ahead of you. I could be 2 steps ahead of you. But that's how I'm able to really connect with my audience and what happens with us. But I love what you said about the different levels of getting to thriving, but also understanding that you will be in thriving mode for 3 to 4 business days, hit a patch, and can slide back so easily.
Hmm.
So that's why it's so important to have your clinician be there. It's so important to have a, I look at my mental health as an offensive way of handling it versus a defensive way. I don't ever want to be on the bottom. That's, but it will work. It will happen sometimes. But the offensive way for me has worked because it gives me the mental health tools that I need to function until I can get to a space where thriving even looks like a light at the end of the tunnel. But I think that so many of us think we go from survival right into thriving, and then there's no in between. And the in between is so important because that's where you really build your character and your mindfulness.
Yeah, there's a thing called the trans-theoretical model of change. What it postulates is that for us to go to an intentional state, there's a state that is pre-contemplative, meaning I may or may not even want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, that theology is associated with someone having a substance abuse issue. I take it a step further. I believe that many of us, whether we're drinking, smoking, you can be a workaholic, a churchaholic, just as much as you could be an alcoholic. You could be a partyholic. I mean, you could be a sexaholic.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that we must understand is that whatever I'm doing that is allowing me to have an escape route from what I don't like dealing with or what I'm putting off or avoiding doing in my life, am I really ready to deal with it or do anything about it? And it's okay to not be ready. However, it's not okay to not know what you're not doing and to not really have clarity on what the possibilities are if you were to change just some aspect of your thought process or your behavior. So the first step in that trans theoretical model is pre-contemplation. Like, why should I? And that's when you really measure, is the benefit of change gonna yield more for me than staying the same? Because
Mm.
if I'm staying the same, then I'm good with where I am. I'm good with, you know, drinking a bottle of wine every week and, smoking 4 or 5 blunts. I'm good with that. Well, if you are good with it, ask yourself, why am I good with it? And ask yourself, okay, what if I were to change it though?
Mm-hmm.
And see, that takes you from pre-contemplation to the contemplative stage, where
Mm.
you take seriously, okay, if I were to do this, like if I stop smoking, if I stop sleeping with these 5 women or these 5 men, you know, my starting 5. What if I spend some time with me,
Mm.
right? And so now going from pre-contemplation to contemplation, then you can move now to the next stage, which is preparation, where you
Mm.
think about, okay, if I'm going to do this, how am I going to do it? I already know that I have metabolic syndrome and I eat too much. In my case, I love peach cobbler. That's my dope. I replaced weed with peach cobbler and cake. But when I stop and think, okay, now I'm type 2 diabetic, I'm going to prepare to make a change. Well, see, the preparation stage comes with actually identifying steps. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and go see an endocrinologist and try to get my A1C level because I know this polyuria, meaning I'm peeing a lot, and polydipsia, I'm extra thirsty all the time and I don't have energy. I want to do something about it. So I'm going to go get my blood tested. I'm going to start going to the gym. Well, all that sounds good, but it's all mythology until you put a date on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
now when
Mm.
you say, I'm going to go to get my blood work done next Tuesday, I'm going to EOS Fitness or Fitness Connection or Signature to join a gym. I'm going on Monday to meet with the people. Now you went from I'm not even knowing whether I'm going to do it. I'm ambivalent to, okay, I'm considering it, and now I'm actually preparing. I'm moving past contemplation. I'm actually thinking about doing this. And the way that you move yourself through stages is now you got a date.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another thing you can do is tell somebody. Get an accountability partner, i.e., a clinician, but it doesn't have to be a clinician. Your first accountability partner could be your kid.
Mm-hmm.
It could be you just telling your kid, you know what, daddy, daddy, daddy's gonna stop drinking so much beer. Mama's not gonna go out with these three men that you don't like. Then that next stage, now we got a date. Now we got a location. Now we got a name. Well, after you go through preparation, now you go to the action stage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fourth stage in that trans-theoretical model. And for some of you, you have to look at your life and you're talking about, I want to be happy. Well, reason you're behind is not happy is you not doing the very stuff that you need to do to be happy. And you talking about you want to have joy. Let me tell you, a church is a spiritual hospital. African Americans and other brown races, we tend to over spiritualize stuff. Well, faith without works is dead, right? And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so the path forward for us is now that we've gone and we started making preparation, action looks like this. I'm going to do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm going to stop eating or I'm not going to eat as much. Okay, I used to eat the whole damn pizza. Now I'm going to eat half the pizza. Or, okay, I ain't going to lie, that pie, I ain't finna stop eating that pie. Well, okay, what if you cut it in half though? What if you only eat half of it right now? And your accountability is after I eat this pie, I'm gonna go walk. I'm gonna just gonna walk to the corner, go get the mail, or I'm gonna walk around the block, and then I'll eat the other half when I get back. Well, some people look at that and say, Doc, that ain't no progress. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you do that takes a step toward what you have a vision for you're creating an intentional outcome. And for people, especially people of color, we must become tolerant and forgiving with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We must have some empathy and some compassion for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The path forward toward this joy that you want in your life, this happiness, it's not going to be because you found an external solution to an internal problem.
Say
You
that
can
again.
have sex with three people this week, and one may suck your toes, the other one may spank you, and the other one y'all may dress up in some costumes. I hope your freaky butt is not doing all of that, but if you are, at least get rid of one of those
Hey, I'm
activities.
not judging. I'm not judging.
Yeah, yeah. But at least get rid of one of those activities, right? Maybe stop the costumes but where I'm going with this is accept yourself.
Yes.
Accept who you're not. Embrace the fact that if you're not dead, you still have a chance to become who you could be. In
Mm-hmm.
order for you to evolve and find what you want to find in your life, you it will be a very good idea to understand that until I become what I've never been,
Mm-hmm.
until I do what I've never done, until I practice what I've never practiced, I'm not going to get there. But once I do it, here's this stage now. You get to this action stage. The next thing in that model is maintenance. In other words, I got to keep it up now. Now I went to
Practice.
the gym,
Practice.
but I need to
Practice.
be consistent going to gym.
Mm-hmm.
I made a commitment to my husband, to my child, to my homegirl, my dude, whatever. I have got to continue communicating with them. So when the person you made a commitment to tells you, man, you need to hit this, man. This I got this from the West Coast. You have to look at them and say, man, look, I need you to be my accountability partner, not my enabler. If
Mm-hmm.
you keep enabling me, bro, I'll never change.
Yeah.
And being honest, that smells good as hell. So I'm finna get up out of here. Kick you out, right?
Yep. Yep.
Or
Yep.
the other part is your coping mechanisms. Accept that, okay, man, that's I done slept with three women this week, or two men, or now my money's funny. I'm about to go and do this behavior that I know damn well I don't need to be at this club dancing, or I don't need to call my friend.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you get to the action phase and you're doing it but not consistently,
Mhm.
Have enough compassion and love for yourself to not get mad and say, you know what, the hell with it. I done already effed it up anyway. I might as well. I knew I couldn't do this. Here's what's real. What's real is human beings, when they have something that challenges them, if it's too easy, you ain't gonna keep it going. And if it's too hard, you won't try again. So find that sweet spot of, okay, maybe I didn't go to the gym. I didn't go, I said I was gonna go 5 days a week. I only went three. Okay. First, accept you're not perfect.
Mhm.
Forgive yourself, empathize with yourself. Now let's think about it. And this is where someone like me comes in. When you go and have a well qualified, I'm not talking about no fake coach. They need to be an ICF credential coach
Mhm. Mhm.
or a national board certified, somebody with a damn license is where I'm going.
Absolutely.
Uh, but when you talk to that clinician, what you probably are going to hit back is, okay, no biggie. Life ain't gonna be isn't gonna be perfect. But on those 3 days you did go, tell me about those 3 days. What happened on those 3 days
Yes.
that you can do more of? Who did you talk to? What did you sacrifice? Did you go to bed early? Did you not hang out with somebody? Because all of us are a work in progress. And where
Mhm.
I'm going with this is that the path toward joy is through peace. The path toward peace is through self acceptance. The
Mhm.
path toward self acceptance is admitting what the hell is wrong with you.
Right.
And if you take these steps that I just gave you, the odds of you moving from a dysfunctional state to a functional state will put you in success mode. And when you get to success, you will start grabbing at thriving.
Mm.
And when you grab it thriving, there's going to be some recidivism, there's going to be some slippage. That's okay. Just keep it moving. Keep
Yeah.
it 100. And if you do that, you will wake up from thriving and be flourishing, and that's where you're going to find joy.
See, and look, and that just that simple, just that simple. But what I love that you
Well, it
said.
ain't simple,
Look,
but
listen, listen.
that's
I
the
was being
fact.
very, very sarcastic. Look, but the simple part that I think a lot of us, and I put myself in that boat for a very long time. I'm 49 now, right? And I will say that it took me about 7 or 8 years to not be hard headed and to not consistently blame the I should have done it better. Be a part of the shoulda woulda coulda
Mhm.
train. I could have I should have gone to 5 days. It was learning how to celebrate the small wins because those small wins is
Mhm.
that's what gets you through the day. That's what gets you to the next day to start over. And we all want
Mhm.
these Instagram wins. We want these big wins celebrated when the truth is, did you get up? Were you able to take a shower today? Okay, all right, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Did you eat today? How many times did you eat today? Okay, if it was a toast and an egg, all right, great. What, so the next day, what did you eat the next? It's really understanding that you have to crawl before you walk. And sometimes you're still learning how to roll over. You're learning how to not just be flat on your back because life can lay you out. And it's when I talk about finding adult joy, one of the things that brings me so much joy, and it has nothing to do with anybody else, it really is those moments where like life is crazy and I can cross my legs and like one cross my legs because I used to couldn't do that, but cross my legs and like have a peppermint patty, right? I'm just like sitting down, craziness is happening around me. I'm just it's like those little teeny moments for me. And it has nothing to do with bliss or anything. It's learning how to like I don't have to fix everything. God didn't put me on this earth to fix everything. Because if I'm broken, I damn sure can help you. But getting to that state, really, a clinician helped me get there. Getting to a place where I could find peace in my own chaos, a clinician got me there. And I think that that's part of the conversation that we've had today on the Alive prompt. It's understanding that Your clinician will have conversations with you. Your accountability partner is going to have conversations with you. Your coach, we're going to have conversations. If you don't talk about it, and if you aren't honest about it, and if all you can do is BS your way through life, that's what you're going to receive back. Because your coach is going to get tired. Your clinician is going to get tired. I've heard clinicians letting people go, and you don't think that that's a thing, but why would you waste their time? They didn't go to school all those years to talk to somebody to have them BS them for weeks on end, you know? So that's one of the takeaways from here. Have the conversation, open up the conversation, find that vulnerable spot, that soft spot, a safe space where you can talk to someone who will allow you to decompress, and then they can organize the thoughts in your head. It makes such a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I know, and I got 2 minutes here. I got to get to a lecture.
Yeah, we
One
got two
thing I
minutes.
want
Yeah.
to, yeah, yeah, I want to celebrate with you is that your vulnerability allows someone to know that, they look at you and no disrespect, but they look at you and they see this pretty woman on this podcast and they think, you know what, yeah, but, and today you were vulnerable, transparent, authentic, and you let people know, you're looking at the shine, but you don't know what's behind the grind that I had to go through to have this shine. I believe it's critical that African Americans, especially women, learn that it's okay to not be okay,
Mm.
and it's okay to love you the way you love everybody else. Because if people can't accept you at your worst, they do not deserve you at your best.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young. I appreciate this conversation. Both of us, we love having conversations. Can you tell? Um, we hope you reach back out to us. If you ever need to reach Dr. Young, you can reach him at.
Just Dr. D. Yvonne. It's spelled like Ivan, it's pronounced Yvonne, but Dr. D. Yvonne Young. I'm everywhere. You could just Google me and you'll see TED Talks, books, shows. I'm getting ready to do something with Netflix. I'm flying out, as a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks to do that. So you can
Congratulations.
find me. Yeah, you can find me.
And my name is Lovely Brown. I host the Healing Through Conversations podcast. I also have a holistic mental health advocacy company where we help women who are going through burnout in the different transitions of life. I love talking to people. So if you're interested, you can reach out to me, Lovely Brown. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this podcast. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a wonderful life.